I am live. Today is the 23rd of July 2025 and I'm coming to the end of The Last Barrier, a Sufi journey by Reshad Feild. It is largely in Turkey. He is in Turkey. There is his teacher Hamid. He now had met Didi, who is a very old man. We're coming here to 11, which starts with 3 quotations. The first by Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. The day is not far distant when humanity will realize that biologically it is faced with a choice between suicide and adoration. And then I quote by Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi, God is never seen immaterially, and a vision of him in women is the most perfect of all. And Sengstan Hassin Ming says, the great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. When love and hate are both absent, everything becomes clear and undisguised. The weather had changed since the last time I had been in Side. The cold winds had passed and already the sun was hot, bringing out the spring flowers in the fields and under the olive trees. The men were in the streets painting the houses and the cafe, readying the town for the tourist season, while in the fields the women were bent over the long furrows, planting vegetables for the summer harvest. I had rented a jeep for the drive from Antalya to Side, with quite a different sense of expectation than I had experienced before. When I had first come to Turkey, I had been motivated by the anticipation of discovering the mysteries of the dervishes, of powers that might be developed, and of a different way of life that could be lived with a knowledge that I had hoped to gain. The weeks of travelling and the constant tests and disappointments had finally brought me to face the knowledge that if I were to proceed any further on the path, all those ideas had to be given up. There is a mystery in the moment which can unfold only when all our hopes and fears have been surrendered. As the jeep neared Side, along the dusty road past the amphitheatre, I knew that this would be the last time, at least for a while, that Hamid and I would be working together. I did not know exactly what had happened, but I did know that something had changed so radically within me that it was time to leave Turkey and put what I had learned and experienced to the test of everyday life. My thoughts and feelings were still muddled, and there was much that could not be explained. But without hope or expectations, I knew that when the time was right, I would begin to understand. I was no longer afraid of Hamid. In fact, I had not realized until then just how fearful of him I had been. After the first enthusiasm of my arrival in Turkey, my fear had grown until at times it verged on terror. Hamid was still an enigma to me, yet, despite the mystery of his strange behavior, I was convinced that when he was trying to pass on to me, what he was trying to pass on to me was correct and of great importance. It was this conviction that had kept me going through the most difficult periods. Didi, in his kindness and total acceptance of me, had helped me to surrender to what lay behind Hamid's words, behind his anger and apparent harshness. Didi had neither questioned nor criticized when I told him of my experiences with Hamid. He would just smile and nod as the translation was made and say, how wonderful are the ways of God, who manifests for each of us all that is necessary for the moment. Until my second trip to Konya, when I was received by Mevlana, I had been fighting the idea that there is an all-knowing being or life force to which we are eternally bound, and therefore there is some part of us that has always known the truth and always will. Hamid had said to me in England, "The soul is a knowing substance. If you know who you are, then you know what it is, and that substance permeates all life. But first you must find your soul, your essential self. You must discover who and what you are, and only then will you be at the threshold of the way." Expectation and hope had produced so many fears. The fear of failure, or failing to gain entrance into the way. There was the fear of losing mind and health in the process. The fear of what it might mean to give up everything in order to come into the real world. Now that I had begun to learn about the arrogance of expectancy and hope, I realized that what I had to work on was not the heart, the seat of the soul, but on the endless layers of conditioned mind, and on the body, and on those energies that must be able to flow freely if we are to become balanced human beings. Hamid came out of the house to greet me as I drove the jeep up to the gate of the courtyard. His manner was casual, as though I had scarcely been away, but he seemed really glad to see me and immediately went into the kitchen to prepare coffee. "Go out and sit in the sun," he said. "The spring flowers are just beginning to show themselves. I will be right out." In the center of the patio stood a little table covered with a pile of Hamid's papers. I sat down on one of the white-painted wooden chairs and looked up at my old room, and below at the girl's room. Her blinds were drawn, but I could sense her presence there. She was another mystery, one that I still longed to unravel. Hamid seated himself beside me and poured the coffee. "Isn't it beautiful now that spring is coming? Spring is my favorite time in this part of Turkey, when the air is warm and the chill of winter is gone. Later, when it gets unbearably hot, I will go to Istanbul. The tourists come to see thee, though. They seem to like lying out there on the beach as though they were pieces of driftwood, getting all burned and dried up. But that is their wish. But now you must tell me all about what you have been doing in Konya and what has transpired. I've been looking forward so much to your return. First of all, please tell me exactly what happened when you went to visit Shams-i Tabriz and Mevlana. Did you sit there for 3 days and 3 nights as you were instructed?" I described my experiences at great length. He was particularly interested when I told him of the changes I had felt within myself at the moment I entered the tomb of Shams-i Tabriz. When I walked in there, all I knew was the overwhelming presence of love. It wasn't like anything I'd ever experienced before. There was nothing I could do but let the power wash right through me. In fact, it was almost as though I weren't there at all. Hamid leaned back in his chair. All he said was, "Ah, Shams." We were silent for a time, and then he added, "May you never recover." I went on to tell Hamid about my meeting with Didi, how he had taken me to his house and that he had known the old man in Istanbul. I had wondered about the old man ever since the day when Hamid had taken me to see him, and now the time seemed right to ask about him. "I wondered if you would finally ask that," Hamid said. "But it does not really matter. All that matters is that you were accepted by him, which showed me that despite what you thought and despite the difficult time that you had in the pension, you had been accepted to undertake the next stage. Even if I told you his name, would you really know any more about him? Let us just say that he is a man of great knowledge. He was happy for you, happy to be able to send you once more to Mevlana. He knew that your intention and your motive were becoming free at last of any ambition, or of any preconceived ideas of what this visit might entail. If your motive had not been clear, you would not have met Didi, who was able to provide you with the rest and comfort that you so badly needed. He would not have come if you had not been accepted by Mevlana, for Didi's love of Mevlana enabled him to know exactly where you stood, whether you were to be allowed to start the next stage of your journey. Now you are at the real beginning. I'm sorry that it has been such a hard time for you. It was not my wish, but you came to see me with so many ideas of what this path is about, and what you thought you wanted, and what you thought would be useful for you, that it was really impossible for me to do anything except to set up the best possible circumstances for you to do what you had to do. Because you really did want to know. It was possible for various scenes to be set up in which you played a part, learning a little more each time. We have much more to talk about today. First though, let's make some coffee and get some food together. You must be hungry after your trip. We both laughed when he produced a jar of black olives, flavored with mint and lemon. These have been waiting for you, he said. I got them ready when you first came to me, and then screwed the lid on tight. They should be just about perfect. He gave me a wink and spooned some out onto my plate. We ate them with rough bread and cheese, and a salad made of lettuce and tomatoes flavored with dill weed. When he had finished eating, I asked the question that was uppermost in my mind at the moment. Hamid, is the girl still here? He looked up sharply, and for a moment I thought he was going to get angry again. Yes, she is here. She's in her room. She's had a tremendous impact on me, even though I've seen very little of her. I've never met anyone like her. She's a complete mystery to me. When you first came here, he said finally, I did not want your attention to be deviated, but now it is time for us to talk and to tie up all the loose ends of our time together. I'm sure you have realized that we have come to the end of this stage of our journey together. Tomorrow we will go back to England. Don't be sad or afraid. There's no reason for that. I could not respond immediately, even though I had guessed that I would soon be leaving Turkey. Hamid's words came as a great shock. I felt suddenly that I could not bear to be separated from him. As usual, he seemed to read my thoughts. Come now, he said, have you forgotten that he for whom you are seeking is not to be found in the world of form? Until you can remember that, you will always be disappointed. He smiled gently, leaning back in his chair. You were asking me about the girl. She was sent to me to see if I could do anything to help her. She has been very ill, as you have seen, and for a long time she has been obsessed with that ball of wool. The doctors in England have not been able to help her. I will tell you her story, but I hope you will remember to look for the true meaning that lies below the surface of things. She has been damaged by going too far without the proper training. In her yearning to be recognized and thus to be freed, she went to different teachers in many countries around the world until, in her eagerness, she lost touch with her essential self and has not yet been able to find the path back again. You might say that she tried to surrender something that she had not yet found. There are 3 stages in the unfoldment of truth. The first is made probably possible only through recognition, the recognition of our essential unity with God. We have always been one with Him, but what we yearn for deep in our hearts is the actual knowledge of this fact. It is not enough to think that we know, for that is only a concept, not knowledge in essence. Recognition means coming once again into that state of gnosis from which we have been separated. When the girl comes to you with the wool wrapped round her wrists like an imprisoned animal, she's begging you to see her, begging you to understand and to free her through recognition and understanding. Yet, until you discover your true self, how can it be possible to recognize another? It is almost as though the girl has been sent to us as a messenger, a continuous reminder of our responsibility in being born man and woman, the responsibility of finding our true self so that we may play our part in bringing others into that great freedom. That is the second stage, which is redemption. The third stage is what is sometimes called a resurrection, but it will take more time in our world before you are ready to understand. I think the girl is recovering now. We will see her later, and you may notice a change. I have been working with her to help her reform the matrix of her true self. I have been in touch with some friends of hers who will shortly be coming here to take her back to England. They also plan to stay with me for a while to study. Hamid leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. This action had become a signal for me to be as open as I could, to try to understand the things that he had been speaking of. During moments like this, it seemed as though I were being lifted into another dimension of understanding, where the rational mind was still, and some other faculty, for which I had no words, was allowed to become active. As I listened to Hamid's words, I knew that the girl with her ball of blue wool was not just another sad creature, unable to care for herself, but that she and her pain represented something far greater than I had yet been able to realize. I saw, for that instant, her place in my journey, and my place in hers. Each piece of the jigsaw puzzle had seemed complete in itself. Now it was time to try to put the pieces together. After an indefinite time, I opened my eyes to find Hamid watching me. We sat quietly for a little longer, and then he said, "Our time together is very short now. There must be many questions that you want to ask." In that instant, I became aware of a feeling of great pain at the thought of parting from Hamid. At the same time, I felt that I was actually experiencing the suffering of the girl. It seemed that there was only one question to be asked. Why does all of this have to hurt so much? Did I not tell you I pity you when you truly say, "I will," unconditionally, to a life of service to God? There's always pain and confusion at first. In the early stages, you experience your pain or my pain. But as we come to understand the nature of the path we have chosen, we no longer see the pain as ours alone, but we begin to experience the suffering of a world ignorant of the truth. This is the pain of separation, the cry of man wanting to know his essential unity with God. Yet this pain was never intended. God never wanted us to suffer, but if we are to come totally into knowledge, all illusion must be stripped away, leaving only clarity. It's our own arrogance and pride that cause the pain. The more we think that we can do anything, the less we realize our complete dependence on God, and the worse the pain becomes. And you, my friend, are particularly obstinate. As he smiled at me, I felt I understood the basic simplicity of life and the complications that we create in running away from the essential self. Hamid continued, "Finally there comes a time when you are so in love, so absorbed in the presence of God, that you welcome all that you are given, for you know that it comes from the one source of all. With this different understanding, suffering becomes conscious. The conscious suffering is not the same as pain, nor does it mean enjoying pain or believing that suffering must be good for you because it hurts. Conscious suffering comes about in the knowledge of what is necessary for the reciprocal maintenance of the planet. This earth was created for mankind, and we are responsible for it. The world needs certain kind of food in the same way that we do. It needs the rain and the sun and the season so that it may bring forth fruit. And it needs other types of energy that mankind does not yet understand. Whenever anyone does come into true knowledge, a certain type of energy is released, made available for this great process of reciprocal maintenance. Normally this energy is released in sufficient quantities only during moments of great crisis and particularly at the moment of death. But now we have reached the point in the life of the planet when we must learn to die to ourselves each moment, to be reborn again each moment, to live and die consciously so that the earth may continue to evolve. I hope that someday you will come to understand what I'm saying. Now, though, we must go on to other things. Do you understand why it is necessary for you to go back to England now? I think maybe it's time for me to go away and try to absorb some of what I've been given these past weeks. I feel that I just can't take in any more right now. And make a break here and finish this another time.